Alright, just like how we cover the four teams in the Western Conference, NBA teams that need to blow it up, we're going to now transition into the Eastern Conference now of the NBA. So starting with the first team is no one other than the the Detroit Pistons, a 4-13 record, the worst in the Eastern Conference. This has been a mess for Detroit. Now, 2 seasons ago, back into the 2019 NBA season, they had somewhat of a pretty nice team when they had Blake Griffin out there coming as a new experiment for them, and they're trying to take it off. Now with the acquisition of Dwayne Casey and Derrick Rose and some of these other players, it's not a good mix. Killian Hayes is now going to be hurt, as it's been reported, and the Detroit Pistons have had Blake Griffin, who's been on a downtrend, whose overall has been down, and has been a very bad season for Blake Griffin. And later in his career, and as we've seen before, we've always seen that trend of an injury history. So there's no true direction for Detroit. They're trying to stay pretty much middle of the pack, but nothing when it comes to them. So basically, they need to hit the rebuild button. They need to restart immediately, because when you have Blake Griffin out there, Dwayne Casey, Derrick Rose, with a bunch of young cats, there's no true direction. You're not going to make the playoffs. And you can tell by management, they wanted to construct this team by giving one last mediocre dance, quote unquote. They wanted to make the playoffs. They wanted to be somewhat interesting, but that's not the case. Now, kudos to Jeremy Grant, who they got that hidden gem out there, who's around 25 years of age, giving you 24 points a night, and pretty much the top of the leaderboards for the most improved and player award. You did bring Jahlil Okafor as well, a nice young guy, but the whole team direct doesn't work together. So the direction's not there. They need to blow it up, and you got to pretty much keep Jeremy Grant as pretty much the main cornerstone with Killian Hayes, and I doubt Jahlil Okafor. But you got to let go of Dwayne Casey. You can get rid of Derrick Rose. He has $7 million left of his contract. You can trade him away for maybe a first-round pick or maybe some young guys. But the most important thing is Blake Griffin's contract, because it's over $30 million, and he can opt in after this season for another $30 million. So the Pistons are in a somewhat of a pickle as of right now. They got to work their ways to pretty much where they can send away Blake Griffin out of there, and they need to do so. And the bad thing is his trade value has been down, so they got to get Blake Griffin going. They need to put his trade value up, and they got to get him out of there. But the Detroit Pistons, a 4-13 record with some injuries, they will not be making the playoffs. They need to rebuild, and they can somewhat understand that direction. The second team in the Eastern Conference, the Washington Wizards. Now, I did not like the trade for the Rockets and the Wizards, because this was not a vertical trade. This is more horizontal, and they kept them both in a weird position. They didn't get better. They didn't get worse. They just both were middle of the pack. So for the Rockets, that was not a good situation by trading away Russ for John Wall just like that and keeping their team middle of the pack. Now, the Rockets got a better end of the deal because John Wall has proven to be a better player than Russell Westbrook as of right now. So you got something there. But the Rockets are still a team that needs to rebuild. But focusing more on the Wizards, Russell Westbrook has been a terrible experiment and experience for the Washington Wizards for the first few games. They have a losing record of 3-9, one of the bottom teams in the Eastern Conference, and Russ is out for a couple of weeks due to an injury. In the games when Russ was out, Bradley Beal was pretty much lead them to a couple of wins. They have better ball movement, chemistry, and more trust into each player. So the Wizards are the bottom of the bottom. They may look to trade Russell Westbrook this offseason. And if anything, they need to quicken that up and do it to this trade deadline at worst case scenario, because the Wizards right now, they need to stick with Danny Avdija and their young talent. They got to let go of Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook. They need to blow it up directly, get some first round picks, and just build off Danny Avdija, which needs to be the case. To try to hold on Bradley Beal for too long, that cannot happen. So Bradley Beal, his trade value is always going to be up. He's always an all-star player in the Eastern Conference. He is young at 26, 27 years of age, so ideally they want to keep him. But you got to let him go, and you got to let go of Russell Westbrook, because you can't build a team off Bradley Beal by himself. He can't be a number one guy and take you to the playoffs. So you're in a situation, if you're Washington, blow it up. It's a bad look for Russ, but it is what it is. The third team in the Eastern Conference that needs to blow it up is the Chicago Bulls. They're sitting at a 7-10 record. Now they did bring in Billy Donovan, who fits very well with Zach LaVine, better than their old coach. But the Lauri Markkanen Zach LaVine experiment is long overdue. It's been around 3 seasons or so, and they haven't made the playoffs. The only potential we've seen was on Zach LaVine, who has a great chance of making an all-star appearance. Lauri Markkanen has always been either hurt or just a disappointment when it comes to his potential. And you don't have any other players out there that really truly help out the team. Denzel Valentine, his potential, we saw it to be super big around 3 to 4 seasons ago. That hasn't been the case. Kobe White's been here or there. He's okay. He's nice, but nothing too big. And Wendell Carter, he's been okay. But for Zach LaVine, he cannot be a number 1 guy on your team and franchise to take you far. He's not an alpha like that. He needs to be a second option. For the Chicago Bulls, you can look to retool by letting go of Lauri Markkanen and some of these other guys to put a second player alongside Zach LaVine, but there's not many players out there you can really make that work with. I mean, who, like Aaron Gordon? I mean, that's not really going to do anything. If you want to go big, of course you want to go for like a Jaylen Brown, but they don't have enough assets, anything. So you're in a weird spot if you're the Chicago Bulls. I believe they should just be able to go ahead and just rebuild directly. Have that restart button. But knowing the Bulls, they're probably going to keep Zach LaVine in play for another season or 2, and they're going to try to build off him. But I don't see it happening. I don't see it working. Whatever. So the Chicago Bulls, they got a lot of work to do because they're not going to make the playoffs, and they got to help out Zach LaVine. But since there's really no one out there, they got to trade him away. They got to rebuild. And last team we do have in the Eastern Conference is going to be the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic are at an 8-10 record. Now, Jonathan Isaac and Markelle Fultz are out for this season, which were huge bummers for the team. But even when it came to them, if they were healthy, the Orlando Magic have a lot of rebuilding and retooling internal decisions they need to make because they've always been around a 7th or an 8th seed for the last 2 to 3 seasons. And they don't have that true player that has full potential of being an all-star or a superstar type player. They have pretty much a lot of B-plus players out there. They don't have that true guy. That's why they can't get past in the first round or deep into the playoff seedings. So for the Orlando Magic, they may want to look to move away from Aaron Gordon, who has not reached that potential. We kind of thought he could be. Not at all. They need to let go of him. They need to rebuild and keep Jonathan Isaac with Markelle Fultz. They got to let go of Evan Fournier. They got to let go of Vucevic and these other players as well. They got to rebuild within that direction. The Orlando Magic, they had their somewhat of a nice little era of, their core, but that needs to go. They need to keep Markelle and Jonathan Isaac and then rebuild from there. So the Orlando Magic, they're not going to make the playoffs. I don't expect that to be, even with the injuries or not. That's not happening. So those are the 4 teams that basically need to blow it up during this season or most likely during this offseason. Now, a team that I'm going to quickly throw into there, the Toronto Raptors. I've always stated this season would have been their last season of pretty much being somewhat relevant, but in 2022, that's when, after and when in this offseason, especially entering the 2022 NBA season, the Toronto Raptors need to rebuild and just keep Pascal Siakam, Fran VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and go from there. Kyle Lowry, his remaining days are probably going to be gone from the Toronto Raptors. I don't expect him to retire there. He may have another 3 to 4 seasons on being on a contender like the Clippers or something like that, but kind of keep an eye. I think Kyle Lowry will probably be done from the Raptors, especially if they don't make the playoffs, and they got to see what happens during the middle of the season, because if it's All-Star break, if they're sitting around 10 games for 500 with a losing record, they may want to make that trade pretty quick and start to rebuild that process, but the Raptors are kind of in that little bubble situation. We'll see a little more when it comes to there. But those are the teams. We'll see more development.